So a lot of people liked that last video I put out. Like, a lot. So, I guess we're doing this again. This all started about a year ago. After a few tutorials and mini projects, I started on my first real project that I called Black Space, or better known to my friends as Among Us. They look nothing alike. I don't even see it. In the game, you play as an astronaut who accidentally created a monster. Your goal is to escape the ship by doing tasks. Okay, maybe it was a little bit like Among Us. I worked on it for about a month until I came up to a problem that my little brain had no idea how to solve. But now, with my slightly larger brain, I'm going back to remake the game in 3D. So to start this project off, I wanted to do a little map design just to see if I could make this game even work. So I hopped into Blender and spent way too much time on this horrible room and almost gave up right there. But then I decided to make the assets modular, which essentially means rather than building each individual room, I would build the parts it takes to make a room, like the walls, the floors, the ceilings, and then I'd put together each room out of those building blocks. But right now, they're just kind of plain white walls. You know what's less boring than plain white walls? Textured walls. Now, I don't know how to make textures, so, let me just... Thank you. Let's just make a project. Give it a name. The Cosmic Corpse. Import this package. Alright, this is actually looking good. But now it's time for something I was a little nervous for. The character movement. But not before getting distracted by post-processing. Wait. Whoa. Oh, whoa. No, not that. Look, I can change the colors. Woo. Oh my god, I'm having too much fun with this. I spent around half an hour just messing with post-processing. But now onto the character movement. Now, character movement should usually be pretty easy. There are thousands of tutorials online for simple character movement scripts. However, I decided to write my own from scratch. The reason mainly being, rather than making the game free roam, I wanted to do this point and click method where you point to where you want to go, click, and then you move there. Now, the movement wasn't very difficult. It basically just boils down to this one line here that just moves you towards whatever object you're looking at. That definitely didn't take hours to code. But right now, you just kind of ominously float towards the target, so I needed some animation. This is what broke me. I spent 2 days trying to get this animation to work, but after it was done, you can now click on a target and walk there. However, the animation is still a little janky, because if the animation finishes before you get to your target, you still ominously float, but I'll fix that later. Now that the basics were pretty much done, it was time to start working on the gameplay of Black Space, which is definitely lacking. I'll just run you through the first sequence of events. You spawn in, you walk up to this little desk, click this button, the lights go out, you walk up to the breaker, flip all the switches, and you're done. Now, I knew I could do a little bit better than that. I'll let past me explain. Okay, so here's the plan. I want to have these 4 blocks inside of this bigger block, and then down here, you'll have the goal of what order those 4 blocks will need to go in. And the way you move them is you click and drag them, and if you move one over a space, the one that's in that space smoothly slides over to where it needs to be. And if you keep dragging it, all of them move down, and then when you let go, it'll move straight into the position of wherever you're holding it. What the f*** was I thinking? I don't know how to do that. That's... And believe me, I tried. Let me just try this. Oh no. Okay. That's not right. So I had to compromise. In the new version, you just click on the object and it switches materials, and when you have them all in the right material, you win the game. Then I drew each of those blocks, and the background screen, which I really tried to have this cool CRT effect over it. I struggled a lot with it. I'll probably come back to that later. Now it was time for the breaker, which I kept mostly the same as the old game. I went to Blender and modeled a quick breaker, set up the animation for it, and made it to where you finish the computer game, all the lights shut off. Now let's see if this works. Well, it's kinda dark in here. So I made a quick little flashlight, and to make it look cool, I gave it a cookie. No, seriously, it's called a cookie. Think about it like the bat signal. You can just shoot a spotlight into the sky, but when you put the mask over it, it creates the shape in the light. So this mask makes the light go from this to this. It just makes it look a little nicer. And that was pretty much the first sequence of events. I added the door and the animation, and this nice little hallway. Now this is where things took a turn for the worse. You see, I spent all this time thinking about map design and lore, and I hadn't really put any effort into gameplay, which is definitely not a good way to make a game. And I knew after my last experience coding a puzzle, I could not make a different puzzle for each room, which was the plan in the original Black Space. So I took the day off to think about this new puzzle, and here's what I came up with. Alright, now here's the plan. Basically, I want a script that generates a random 5-digit numbers using only numbers 1 through 5 and only one of each. So like, I'll put an example on the screen. Then the user inputs a guess, and they'll be told which ones are right, which ones are wrong, and which ones are right next to where they need to be. Kind of like Wordle. So I sat down with a nice hot cup of coffee and got to work writing a script. Why? Oh, okay. It worked. And that's just the day in the life of an indie game dev. This is just water. Now, you might have noticed this is just a glorified oven. How am I going to fit this into my game? Back to Blender we go. And at this point, I was actually getting pretty comfortable with Blender. I mean, this only took me like 20 minutes to make, and it looks pretty good. I was very happy with it. I mean, just look at those keycaps. You want to know something else really cool I made? A Discord server. Now, I don't plan to promote this a whole lot, but if you want to get updates on any of my videos or projects that I'm working on, I'm only going to do that through Discord. Now, back to the video. Back in Unity, I imported the two models I made, one being the key code, and the other being the device to crack the key code. Okay, yes, I know it looks kind of silly, but it was intended to be that way. I made a new room and imported all the code from the test project into this project. And surprisingly, it worked first try. I mean, I only had to change a few lines of code just to make it more scalable, but it worked really well. And I just think it looks cool. Now, if you've looked at the length of the video, you probably can tell this game's not getting done this video. The rest of it will be done in a part 2. But before I wrap up, I wanted to polish a few things first. Starting with the animation. Like I said before, if the animation ends before you get to your destination, you just float. So my solution was to make 3 different animation states. One for looking down, one for walking, and one for looking back up. So then I just had to code it to where you look down, you move until you reach your next destination, and then you look up when you've hit it. And lastly, I did some map design. Now, I really tried to hold out as long as I could, but I knew if I wanted to get the game done this century, I needed to use some pre-made models. So I went back to the Unity Asset Store, got a few more models, and scattered them around the map. And here's what I've ended up with. Now, all of this is up for change, but it did make me happy seeing the map a little bit more filled out. As I said before, there will be a part 2 to this video, where I finish the whole map, and actually make the monster from this game. So if you enjoyed this video, look out for the part 2, and for all those people asking about playing the last game, this one will be uploaded when it's finished. So go watch the last video if you haven't, subscribe,